Hey, everybody, welcome back to Onstage, Offstage. I'm your host, George Sapio, and this is episode number 195, October of 2025. Our guest this month is Dave Osmundsen. Dave is an autistic playwright, dramaturg, and actor whose article, Finding Autistic Theatre Artists is a Challenge, if you make it a challenge, appeared in Howlround this past February. It's a terrific article, and I wholly recommend reading it because it will definitely broaden your knowledge base around autism. In the article, Dave addresses several questions of how the theater world could include, accommodate, and better understand autistic theater artists, while also allowing those accommodations to enhance and strengthen not just the needs of autistic theater artists, but the needs of everyone involved in the theater company. Let's start with your article. As I mentioned to you, I was going through Howlround and I saw the article, Finding Autistic Theater Artists, and I read through it, and I was captivated by it. It was a subject I know very little about, being allistic myself. I went up to see who had written this thing, and I found out it was you. And I said, "Oh my goodness, I have to call Dave."
You never know where an autistic playwright is going to show up.
But I wanted to talk to you about it because it's new territory for me. And I imagine it's new territory for many, many, many people. What in particular was the impetus to actually sit down and write this highly informative, excellent article?
Well, thank you for your very kind words about the article. I really appreciate them. The impetus was, it wasn't necessarily one thing. It was a bunch of different events that kind of culminated in this big moment
Yeah.
where I had repeated conversations with some theaters about not knowing if they can find an autistic actor for the autistic characters, being asked to connect people with neurodivergent theater organizations and doing that emotional labor, which I'm happy to do, don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but it's almost like you want a little more proactivity on their end. If my work is so like thrilling and exciting to them, then I like to think the first thing they can say is, okay, how can I support this writer? Because working with an openly autistic person is a new thing for me. I find it's a new thing for a lot of people. And there's so much focus on worrying about getting it right. Autistic people can be messy and complicated, and the characters can be messy and complicated. So I think there's like so much tentativeness and respectability, which is important, but also don't see us as this stoic monolith. We're freaking hilarious.
Your article brings up so many different aspects for holistic people to learn about in order to become acquainted with and understand folks who are autistic. One of the things you bring up is, of course, theater plays and plays with autistic themes. The question is, should we hire autistic actors to play these roles? Which leads us to two things. A, how do we find them? And B, do we actually label them as autistic? Because a lot of people do not want to have that as a label. They want to be an actor. How do we get around that particular stumbling block?
There is still such a stigma attached to society,
Mm-hmm.
to autism specifically in society, that a lot of people feel that if they are open about disclosing their autism, they will be pigeonholed into only playing autistic characters, when
Sure.
ideally, as an actor, you want to play a wide range of roles. Something really that you can look at that's really interesting is the careers of the actors in the musical How to Dance in Ohio, kind of like past that major moment for them. Some are working on high profile projects, others are doing the New York theater grind, others
Mm-hmm.
are doing regional theater. I think it's really important that these actors get to play all sorts of roles and not just pigeonholing them. So I think approaching them as an actor and asking them point blank, do you want to be labeled autistic? Or maybe not labeled, or like, are you okay with publicly disclosing your
Yeah,
autism? It's
yeah,
really a conversation because it's a complicated topic for so many people, especially actors who risk being, or rather fear, I think, being pigeonholed because I think some actors just don't find the right projects, you know?
right. Well, you don't want that to be the main focus of who you are. You're an actor.
Yeah, to make
You're a
yourself
male.
marketable, yes.
Exactly, and well, you don't want to be, as you say, pigeonholed into, well, that's Mike, and he's autistic, and all of a sudden we've got that little thing going on in there about Mike, and everybody tends to now look at Mike as this, where that is not his entire being. There is so much more to him, but his autism plays a part in how we relate to him, how we deal with him, and especially in theater because it's critical.
I wouldn't even say how we deal with him. I would say how do we support
How do
him?
we support him?
So
Yes.
even that,
Mhm.
like the language around autism is like because it's changing so rapidly, like
Yeah,
even I as an autistic person, I'm sure some of the language I use is outdated. And I think part of destigmatizing autism is just, little language shifts towards more support needs. I think that's why I'm really excited that needs-based languages is kind of replacing functioning language. Because
hmm,
I've always been labeled high functioning, and I'm like, oh, well, am I a robot? Am I a human? Is
yeah,
this a Philip K. Dick novel? Is that what my life is? Rather than how do they function in society, which is what capitalism wants us to do.
right,
How does society support this one individual? And I'm not saying that it can't be a challenge because it definitely can, but as long as there is an open mode of communication, then I think as long as the autistic artist feels empowered to have that conversation
sure,
and use that part of their narrative for marketing purposes or not, it should be up to them. They should have
absolutely,
autonomy in that.
yeah. Well, again, part of the problem is for folks who are allistic, that is non-autistic. We very frequently, most often, do not understand how to support, how to understand, how to not say the wrong thing, how to not do the wrong thing. It is a subject that many of us are ignorant of. Okay, so education plays a very big part, learning how to support folks who are not like you. And this could be anything, could be autism, could be religion, could be skin color, could be anything. Learning about other folks and finding ways to relate on an even level can be threatening to some people, can be challenging, but it needs to be done, I think. And one thing I want to get to a little bit later in the interview is that there's a survey that people
Yes.
use, okay, which I really, really want to cover, but I want to get to a couple of things first. Nothing about us without us is really what I should have probably started with. And again, producing a play that has autistic themes or has autistic characters by someone who is not. And there's going to be debate about this. It's a play. People should be able to just, walk in and embody the character, see what choices the character makes, and run with that, which I've heard on several occasions. I'm not quite sure that I actually agree with that, but nothing about us without us makes sense to me.
I have, it is interesting. I have had autistic people involved in my plays without playing, but did not play the autistic character. I know
Mm-hmm,
there was one university production of my work where I don't think the actor playing the lead was autistic, but the director is openly autistic.
mm-hmm,
So you have an autistic person literally steering this ship. So I think nothing about us without us. I think we have such a limited grasp of what that can look like. I feel like right now we see it and think, oh, that's just either actors or a consultant. Of course, having acting representation and having a consultant is great. I know How to Dance in Ohio had several consultants from the
mm-hmm.
autistic community and building that show. But do we have autistic people, say, backstage? Do we have them on the design team? Do we have them as the director? Do we have them as the producer? So I think Nothing About Us Without Us can look like so many other ways that involve the many gifts that I think the autistic community really has to offer. I also think for non-autistic actors who play autistic character or find themselves, playing an autistic character, I think there is a way to do it as long as it's in good faith, that people don't go into it as a savior. Oh, I'm gonna represent this community.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I feel like that just it makes me wonder if this is for you because you want awards or because you are empathetic to this experience and feel that you want to embody it somehow and are looking for support from the community to guide you in that. See, there are two completely different scenarios
Hmm.
there.
Yeah, is it for you or is it for the issue itself? Throwing the word autism around like it's an easy word, and it's not. It's an incredibly complicated concept, and it takes many forms. And there are degrees, there are differences, there are manifestations of it, there are physical embodiments, and it varies across the spectrum. And there's no one thing that you can actually, hang on a peg and go, this is what it is.
And
But when
that's
you
why I think like when a lot of people say spectrum, I generally prefer using the term constellation because I feel that constellations can have many manifestations and stories, and
hmm,
autism can have many manifestations and stories. And I think that was kind of what Lorna Wing, who did a lot of legislation in order to expand the criteria of autism. I think that's kind of something that she meant more by when she said the spectrum.
well, it's an easy word to describe a wide variation of associated differences, I guess, or associated characteristics that
Yeah.
because our tendency is to make things as simple as possible because we reject complexity in so many ways, especially these days because life is just overwhelming. And the
Yeah.
fact that people can still get out of bed in the morning is a testament to the human spirit. We try to simplify things, and we come up with complexity. We tend to shy away from that, so we reject possible understanding and possible education, which can open up avenues of communication, which I think is overly important, and it might be the most important thing we need to pursue as a society in this is get the dialogue going, keep the dialogue going, and
Find
understanding.
people willing to have those dialogues.
Yes, yeah, but well, that's completely that's an associated problem with that. Do you want to talk about it, or do you just want to stay in your cave? But we're talking
Do you
about
want to talk about it or do you want to be right? It's like that line in broadcast news where he says, it must be great being the smartest person in the room. And she's like, no, it's awful.
theater companies. You
Yes.
were talking about autistic people in management, autistic folks in production, stage management, all that sort of thing. All these myriad functions. And I'm sitting here and I'm dying to ask the question: what would the caveat be? What would we need to do? Because the theater company needs to run smoothly. All right, we always have problems, and our specialty is fixing problems in order to get this show up on the boards
Hmm.
and making things work. So when we talk about putting autistic people into positions like that, how would you make it a safe space, make it welcoming, and make it work for folks who require different things to happen or not happen in order to be in a safe space?
I think creating a safe space, I think the best way to create a safe space is know what it requires in order to be safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And say what's safe for one person can be dangerous for another. So let's say I've theoretically gathered a neurodiverse group of individuals to create a show. We have allistic folks, we have OCD folks, we
Mm-hmm.
have folks with ADHD, autistic folks. Did I mention neurotypicals? I think I mentioned neurotypical, although I personally don't think neurotypicality exists. That's another conversation. But the first thing that I would do is I would give them all a pre-rehearsal survey, which I know you wanted to talk
Yeah,
about.
and I think it's about time for that. Yeah.
So the survey for How to Dance in Ohio, I don't know if it has been posted anywhere publicly, but it's
I
easy
was
enough.
looking for it. I couldn't find it.
It's easy enough to get the questions,
Okay.
though, I believe, because we used for my production of More of a Heart at Blue Barn, we used a very similar template in sending out to the different cast and crew what is everyone's access needs. And of course, people had varying access needs.
Mhm.
But there is one individual who said, my eyes need time to adjust, going from really dark to really bright. Having that in mind, when an issue about lighting backstage came up, there was one individual who required a space to pace, which the theater also made sure to show him and us as playwright and my director, my brilliant director Alan McLeod, where these pacing spaces would be. That's it out. I think, one individual used no, used a white noise machine.
Mhm.
So being aware of what people need, I think, is really the first step to creating as accommodating an environment as possible. I think you can honestly, from there, operate the room like a regular rehearsal room with a few, I think, like consensus-based decisions, such as, when do people want to take breaks, or maybe do people need longer breaks, or is there
Mhm.
going to be an open policy where if someone needs a break, they can stop the rehearsal for 5 minutes. I've seen that happen multiple times, an
Okay.
actor needing a break, and I have never experienced it to be a bad thing. It is very much about, I want to do this role to the best of my ability. I'm going to burn myself out if I go at this rate. I need to step back, readjust, and then jump back in. And I always find them more energized afterwards. And I've also been in situations where we would end rehearsal early because we got through everything that we needed to do and we're just killing time doing a run, and one actor was like, okay, my body can't go on anymore.
Mhm.
Fine, end of rehearsal, we did everything on our checklist, we and then some. We don't need to keep you here in a potentially exhausting environment. Now, granted, those were for some pretty small scale productions. I
Sure.
can't really speak for what it may be like to be a musical, which has many, many demands on the director's
Yeah.
part. Again, I think even then, I think that's more important to know everyone's access needs. And that's
Sure.
another thing. You can also ask at the top of each rehearsal, is everyone's access needs met?
These are things that I was never acquainted with in my theater education, but they make so much sense across the board for everyone because there have been times in rehearsal when I've just had it. I don't want to see these people. I've been in here for 4.5 hours. And even though I love this play, I love the work, and I love the people I'm with, if I have to stay here for 5 more minutes, I'm going to go ballistic. Or the lights are getting to me. I mean, the lights are really, really getting to me.
Oh,
And there
yeah.
are so many audio sensory things that happen in theater for effect. Some of them are shocking, like gunshots or bright lights or strobe lights and that sort of thing. We've learned to put trigger warnings up on signs on the program that says, okay, if you're subject to disturbances like these, we're letting you know right now. This doesn't seem to me to be anything other than a really good way to make sure that your actors are well taken care of. This doesn't seem
Absolutely.
it doesn't seem out of the ordinary to me. It seems like a good step forward. When I'm running a company, I want to take care of my people. They are my people. They are my actors. They are my stage manager. They are my techies. Because as a director, I am in charge of this thing.
Yeah.
And
And
I
don't
come,
forget to expand that same access ask to the crew as well,
oh
because they're
no,
the ones making the show happen.
everybody in that theater is part of the same family. And everybody in the theater should have the same considerations. This idea of a survey, which I don't know why it's taken me this long to come around to something as useful and as beneficial as this, but it's a new thing and I love it. It shows A, that you care, which makes everybody feel welcome, but it also takes care of the folks whose reactions to things are a little bit different.
Again, I think it also that might have been an issue when you didn't know about that person's access needs. So suddenly it's no longer an issue because that access need is being met.
I'm recalling one person that I worked with on a play many, many, many years ago. At the same point in the play, she would come. There were sound effects, and she was fine up until then. But as soon as we got to this and this music came in, she would start cringing, and she would get a headache,
Oh, wow.
and nobody could figure out why or what. I'm not saying she was autistic. I'm just saying she reacted badly to this particular sensory occurrence. So we had to adjust, and she was
Mhm.
fine after that. This falls under the realm of taking care of your people and servicing the play as well because we found a solution.
Especially, yeah, especially your autistic actors who are coming from a very traumatized community
Yeah.
because of how like allistic people have treated us for the sake of either science or for ridicule or
Hmm.
eugenics. And radical access thought like this benefits everyone. Even people who never thought they needed an access need are like, oh, hey, that can I actually ask for that too? That works for me.
What you just said, it just brings up a whole subject of a whole topic of being autistic and having to go through life not being understood or being misinterpreted or being seen as, and I'm using heavy air quotes here, different.
Or a burden, or an inspiration porn star, or this, or that.
It takes a certain kind of strength to, like I said, get up out of bed and keep going every day. Trying to look at it or trying to imagine it from your point of view, from an autistic point of view, is pretty much hopeless for me. But it's there, and it's a reality that being reminded of because it happens to people who are different, no matter what.
And having to be told like how to behave by society when they
Yeah.
break that rule all the time. So it's like I've been giving a rule book in draft. I think
Mhm.
that's the best way to describe it, where there is a demonic editor just editing it for no good reason, adding addendums like no one's business, and you just get too burnt out to really care after a certain point.
Mhm.
And at that, when you get to those points, it's very important to be around the people who love and support you. Ultimately, you need to figure out how to self-care and how to use a phrase regenerate or recharge your batteries
Yeah.
because autistic burnout is its own thing. I've experienced it and I've approached it. I feel like there are other people who can describe like what exactly autistic burnout is much better than I could, but for me it's just feeling like emotionally depleted by something that once gave me a sense of purpose. And it takes a while to really, I think, build back from that sometimes. I approached burnout earlier this summer because it felt like I had hit rock
Yeah.
bottom and it felt like every day was like an illness. Like, oh, I'm a little better this day, I'm a little better this day, I'm a little better this day.
Yeah. You wrote, why can't we as an industry talk about our neurodiversity more? Why is there so much shame around it? What are boundaries between neurodiversity and generally poor behavior? Why can't we talk about this? It's, you say so much shame around it. That's a horrible thing to have to deal with. I mean, conversations about things like this are difficult because we have to learn the right language. We have to learn how other people will interpret what we are trying to say, even though we may not say it the right way.
And not being taken in bad faith, because I think that's a big part of the autistic experience being, or at least my autistic experience, I
Yeah.
should say, being taken in bad faith. It makes it so fun. Like some of my best theatrical experiences have been like with plays by playwrights I'd never heard of. So I
Mhm.
would hope those same rules apply for like meeting playwrights where you don't know what or autistic theater artists where like I don't know how this conversation is gonna go. I don't know. It can lead to a great conversation.
I think with extended conversation, you grow comfortable with each other, and trust comes in. If there are misconceptions, misunderstandings, mistakes, they are corrected in good faith,
Yes.
and we move on from there. We have more knowledge in our brain belt here.
And everybody is in draft. Everybody is in draft.
Yeah, nobody's published until you're dead.
Hmm.
Well, yeah.
I had an audience member at a presentation of my play, My Brother Jake, at the Rogue Theater Festival
Mhm.
recently, and she said that during the talk back that she had an autistic sister and had labeled her as like low functioning, and she's like just realizing in that moment how hurtful it was, and
Yeah.
she like began to choke up. And we all had to be like, no, like that is great that you have realized that. I myself have done and said a lot of stupid ableist things because internalized ableism is really hard to live with.
Mm.
Um,
It's tricky, but I think as long as you make the effort, it's all worth it. I hope it's all worth it. Misunderstandings are going to occur, and it's only through working through those things that we become closer and we learn to trust each other and we become less strange to each other.
yeah.
There's something here that I want to ask you about the tragedy inspiration dichotomy in disability
Yes.
narratives. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you explicate that just a little bit?
Sure. So I was kind of thinking about how I wanted to phrase this a bit earlier, and I think the difference between the two is tragedy is where a disability is an obstacle that can't be overcome, whereas inspirational is where disability is an obstacle that is overcome. Or maybe overcome is the wrong word. I don't know, but I think what bothers people a lot about like inspiration porn movies, to use that term, is that it's like if this disabled person can become accomplished, why can't you, normal person?
Yeah.
As if the disability is like a burden rather than something that, has its challenges, but if society were more supportive, the majority of those challenges would be seriously mitigated.
We're talking like a my left foot kind of thing here.
Or Flowers for Algernon, I think, is another
Right. Okay.
really good example. Me Before You and the tragedy. More recent examples like Girl from the North Country, where disability is played as a tragedy, although I would love to see a disabled on theater ensemble do that show. There's also like inspirational, like the recent Zachary Levi film, The Unbreakable Boy. There is Atypical, the Netflix series. Rain Man, okay, Rain Man's actually a really interesting case because it kind of falls in between where we're supposed to see how brilliant this man is, and yet at the end, spoilers if you haven't seen Rain Man, he ends up back at I think the
Yeah.
institution that he's staying at. So it kind of falls in between, which is interesting to me. The most famous example theatrically, of course, is the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime,
Which has
and
gotten tons of play over the past number of years.
it really has. And that is both a great thing and kind of a constricting thing
Mm.
because it feels
How
like
so?
the only autism narratives that are widely accepted are ones that play into hyper theatricality or this really heightened sense of experiencing the world.
Yeah.
And not that there isn't a place for those narratives, because I think one of the brilliant things about theater is the very unique way of manifesting a heightened sensitivity of the world around you in an immediate environment. It's basically the immediacy. But I feel like there's something valuable to seeing how autism manifests in more mundane settings where we're seeing more how the world itself, and this is kind of the theater I think I want to create, the theater that kind of shows how people react to the very presence of this autistic person while centering them in their own narrative. And I admit to sometimes adding theatrical flourishes when they feel right, but I don't necessarily want audiences to see just my character's mindscape. I want them to see how they operate in the world, how they express
Yeah.
emotion, how they experience love and pleasure and anger, and finding ways to kind of flourish that rather than do Curious Incident, which was like
Mhm.
this pretty consistent barrage of sensation, which wasn't even accessible to several autistic people who have heightened sensory needs.
Not easy to draw complex characters, whole
Mm,
complex characters that run the gamut from this part of their personality to that part of their personality. And theater is, of course, part spectacle. That's what we go for. Everything
yeah.
from the arguments and the debates on stage to the stage fighting to the intimacy to the special effects to all the stuff that's entertaining. And it's hard to balance out real life with spectacle sometimes. Dave Osmundsen, thank you so very, very much for coming on
Thank
the
you so
show.
much
And
for having me, George.
oh, are you kidding me? It's a pleasure. It's yeah, I forgot how much I miss talking to you.
Oh my gosh, me
Yeah,
too.
it's been a
I
while. What do you
I
got coming
know.
up? Anything?
So I'm actually making my New York playwriting debut in December.
Yes, tell me.
So it is a play called Bum Bum or This Farce Has Autism. It is going to be presented at the Here Arts Center from December 4th through 14th, presented by Epic Players, which is New York's leading neuro-inclusive theater company. I've been cultivating this relationship with them for several years now,
Mhm.
and I am really excited to get to work with them on this project. I'm just happy that I am going to be ending 2025 on a note of joy. And then the second big thing happening is if you are in the Fort Lauderdale area next May/June, my play Light Switch is going to be running at Island City Stage.
Fantastic. That's great. Congratulations and well earned.
Thank
So,
you. Thank
yeah.
you.
Okay. Dave, thank you so much.
Thank you, George.
Hey kids, thanks for listening to On Stage Offstage. On Stage Offstage is produced monthly, and all of our shows can be found at onstageoffstage.org and also on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, and Google Podcasts. If you enjoy what we do, please recommend us to your friends. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at OnOffStage. And if you are a theater artist with an upcoming project or interest, or know of someone in the theater world who'd make good chat, by all means, send us a note at onstageoffstagepodcast@gmail.com. Our theme music is Don't Worry, Be Frappy by the composer Max Dickinson. You can find a lot more of Max's magnificent music on SoundCloud. I'm George Sapio. Thanks once again for listening, and please be kind to those with whom we share this rock. And as always, happy theatering to all of you.